Well, since the war began on October the 7th, Israel's bombing campaign across the Gaza Strip has killed 7,028 Palestinians. That's according to the Health Ministry. It also says that more than 100 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have been killed in just over 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the Israeli government says more than 1,400 Israelis were killed in Hamas military operation. The Palestinian Ambassador to the UN has addressed an emergency sitting of the General Assembly in New York. It follows 2 failed Security Council resolutions tabled by the US and Russia. He called on countries not to allow Israel to violate international law.
The answer to the killing of Palestinian civilians is not the killing of Israeli civilians. And the answer to the killing of Israeli civilians is not the killing of Palestinian civilians. Vengeance is a dead end. The only path forward is justice. The only path forward is justice. Justice for the Palestinian people. Don't distort the law. Don't bend it. Don't break it. Don't betray it to accommodate Israel.
Israel's ambassador to the UN says the current conflict can't be seen in the context of previous history.
The October 7th massacre and what ensued has nothing to do with the Palestinians. Nothing. It has nothing to do with the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Palestinian question. This is not a war with the Palestinians. Israel is at war with the genocidal jihadist Hamas terror organization. Only. It is the law-abiding democracy of Israel against modern-day Nazis.
Iran's foreign minister says Western powers have double standards in their attitude to the war.
It has been 3 weeks that we have been witness to the war crimes and genocide of the occupying Israeli regime in Gaza and the West Bank of Palestine. The United States and several European countries have sided with the occupying regime of Israel without observing the UN Charter and international law.
Abdelhamid Siyam is joining us now. He's Professor of Political Science and Middle East Studies at Rutgers University. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. You were sitting with us as those speeches were going to air. They were very powerful. They were very emotive. The Israeli ambassador was holding up pictures of those who'd been killed and injured in the events of October the 7th. What's your assessment of what you've been hearing so far?
Yeah, I think the speech of Riyad was very well written and was very well delivered also. He delivered it with emotions, with appealing to the delegates to vote for peace and to vote for the draft resolution.
Should you just explain, we're talking about the
Riyad Monsour,
Riyad Monsour, the Palestinian ambassador.
The Palestinian, that's the first speech. I think it touched the hearts of many people, and that was reflected in the long applause he received a few times in the middle, and at the end, they gave him long applause. Now we come to the Israeli speech. Very strange speech, honestly. As if history started on the 7th of October and ended on the 7th of October. No one's supposed to think outside this framework. He put a frame for the people. Think only of what happened. These atrocities, what happened to the children, what happened this. But what happened before 7th of October, to put it in context, or what happened, what Israel did after the 7th of October, it was completely missing. And the most unacceptable statement he made, that it's not a war against the Palestinian, it's a war against Hamas. And those who are killed, 7,000, probably none of them Hamas. It's mostly at least over 70% women and children, not counting the UN staff, not counting the elderly, not counting the UNRWA student and UNRWA also staff. So how could he address the public, 193 countries, and say it's not a war against the Palestinians? That is, I found that that's too too hard to swallow. And he appealed also again with the delegates not to vote for this resolution. It looks like there is so much mobilization from both parties, the Arab on one side and the Israeli, to the delegates to vote or not to vote. So there is so much, and we're going to see that reflecting in the results of the vote. We might not find a huge number of people voting for the draft resolution, but of course it will pass, but maybe with 128, 130, 125. So I expect along those lines.
One of the things that I noticed was that there was a repeated reference, certainly on the Palestinian side, to double standards.
Yes.
Those who were siding with the Israelis, they said, were focusing only on the deaths of the Israelis. And why were they not considering the deaths of the Palestinians? At the same time, of course, the Israeli ambassador to the UN almost saying exactly the same thing, saying it is hypocrisy to not take into account the 1,400 Israelis who have been killed on October the 7th, when only to focus on the plight of the Palestinians. It's a difficult argument to make to a degree on both sides to try to persuade the other to go with that when we are dealing with such a polarized situation.
Very true, but I mean, it looks very clear now with the number of deaths in Gaza, the number of casualties rising up to 7,000. And no one can deny that there is a double standard on the part of some Western countries who kept lining behind Israel and did not call for immediate ceasefire. So it shows, I mean, there is a kind of support for one side against the other. What the Palestinians been longing for is to be addressed as humans, as being the victims who were under occupation, and not look from only the lenses of Israel, seeing that these atrocities committed on the 7th of October. So that's why the Palestinians and the Arabs in general, always raise the issue of double standard. If one Israeli is killed is one thing, one story, but if 10 Palestinians or 50 Palestinians killed, then it's another story. That's what this analogy always come back to the floors of the General Assembly about the double standard, both in the Security Council and the GA. The Israelis want also the delegates to adapt their own narratives, which sometimes I found this is not convincing, because there is occupation here. You cannot deny it. You cannot look the other way. You cannot deny that the Palestinians are being subject to most brutal occupation for 56 years, and Gaza under siege for 16 years. These are the facts. So why people ignore that? Why the draft resolution of the United States did not mention even that? So that is where the Arabs and Palestinians keep complaining about this double standard.
Really appreciate your analysis on this. Abdelhamid, Siyam, thank you for now. Thank you very much indeed.